We're getting a couple more people in the waiting room. Awesome. For those that just joined, we'll get started in a few minutes. We have people from all over. I'm seeing Arizona, Brooklyn, California, Seattle. Hey, everyone.
Someone was in, I think, Baja or somewhere in Mexico. I'm like, yes, please. Yes, please.
I know.
Baja, California. I'll take it.
A little jealous. It's getting a little cold here in Chicago.
I know. Stockholm. So fun. I would love to.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I will take you up on that.
I know. I have a passport that's stuck in that renewal process at the moment. It's so frustrating. I'm like, come on, I have to get out of here. Let me go.
Passports are always a headache.
I know. It's only every decade. So
right. We'll give it one more minute. We'll get started at 12:03.
I love it.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ERGs 101, how to launch ERGs at your company. A quick note, this is being recorded and the recording will be sent out after the event concludes. So before we get started with our amazing content, I wanted to introduce myself. So I am Demebi Egbuna, co-founder and CMO of Chezi. For those that are new to our platform, I kind of wanted to share our story before we begin. So my brother and I are first generation Nigerian immigrants. And we both worked for large corporate companies. So we know what it's like to feel excluded in the workplace. We launched Chezi in June of 2020, and we initially started as a Glassdoor for minorities. So our goal was really to give diverse job seekers insight into the minority experience so they can make more informed career decisions. And then at the beginning of 2021, we launched our employer offering, which is a software platform that allows companies to take their employee resource groups from intent to impact. By giving them the ability to track engagement, membership, and budget. And that kind of leads us to this event series that we've been running. So that's enough about us. I'd like to pass it over today to today's guest speaker, Alison Crawford, Global Head of D&I at Ripple. So feel free to put any questions in the chat. I will read those off to Alison at the end of this session when we do our Q&A portion. So Alison, the floor is yours.
Maybe. It was so nice to be here. I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I'm here to spread all of the knowledge, and hopefully you get some new takeaways here, and hopefully you also feel comfortable sharing any of your experiences. But please note that this is not the last time that we'll be in touch. You can always reach out to me one-on-one. I'm also going to be doing an AMA, Ask Me Anything, on the Chezi platform on Friday, but we'll talk about that as well too as we get into it. So we'll talk a little bit about my background and how I got into this work. I think it's always important to kind of reflect and talk about what the history of employee resource groups, like how did they start? Is this a new thing? But actually they've been around for decades. And then I also like to encourage anyone that's interested in starting an employee resource group to really explore the what and the how within your organization. So we'll dive into that. And then the magical 4 steps to start an employee resource group, and we'll answer any questions at the end. So a little bit about me. I've been working in tech since 2009, 2010. Before that, I had an interior design business. I worked in sales leadership. I have a strong background also in global benefits. And I also work, actually, I'm a 2nd generation first responder. I work on a 2-person 911 ambulance crew as well too, serving Solano County here in the Bay Area. So nothing really phases me. Nothing offends me. Nothing, you can't shake me, basically. I've seen it all. And I often say my eyes look like this because I'm fighting, systemic racism and also COVID, a global pandemic. So I've been a nomad for most of my life, and I'm also first generation as well too. And I was raised by two people that always taught me to go to the only in the room and to really uncover who's experiencing being left out. And what can we do about that? So that's a little bit about my background. I'm also a parent. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I'm based here in San Francisco. Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk about some employee resource groups. So employee resource groups have been around since the 1960s, and they were in response to a pretty big shift and uprise here in the United States that were related to racial tensions. And obviously we know this is not something that was really resolved in the 1960s. It's something that's still extremely important and current even in today's society. But it was interesting to see that it was really stemmed, and they started in these massive corporations like Xerox and AT&T to help empower Black employees, because there were, and there still is, discrimination within those workplaces. So the employee resource groups started off kind of stemmed from more actions related to like unions. If anyone here has been in a union, or a parent that's been in a union, kind of that same kind of activism within the organization. And then they continued to grow within some major corporations like HP. I know they've had a really active one. And then within some CPG companies like Kraft Foods, they've had employee resource groups for many, many years, which is pretty meaningful. Then later on, if many of you are familiar with LGBTQ, it looks like the G is not LGBT. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. There's a little bit of a typo there for the LGBTQ community, forgive me. But we know that after the 80s, there was a huge push towards accepting that community within workplace, and understanding that just because they self-identified as gay or lesbian, that didn't mean that they were harmful to their peers within the workplace. So there was a big push for ERG efforts for that community. And as we know, when gay marriage was passed in 2014, 2015, that also spurred a lot of activism within offering equal benefits. And if I could just ask if anyone, I think someone's off mute, looks like maybe Cindy, if you don't mind muting, since we have quite a few people on, that would be great. So here's a little background on our history of employee resource groups. It's always kind of nice to take a step back. Now let's talk a little bit about the what and the why. So the what and the why metrics. And we always want to be thinking about what are the things that we can measure within an organization. So I always have the kind of term metrics tacked on, or data points tacked on to this type of work. So the what metrics are based on those facts that are really clearly rooted in data. So this is like demographic data within your organization. And it's not lost on me that probably most of the people on this call don't have access to the number of Latinx employees at their organization, or LGBTQ individuals at their organization. But from looking around and being in meetings, there might be some skew towards certain identities. And the what metrics are just facts. Like, this is how the organization is represented. It's not only around identities, but it's also around function as well too. It could be that we know that this organization is, like the one that I work for, is 60% engineering. And we know that there's always going to be considerably more men working in engineering, unfortunately, than women. That's going to change. I'm very confident in that over time, as more and more girls get into STEM as they grow up. But and then the why metrics are the ones that are quantified. So when we're taking a look at the why, this is things that might be happening that can be tracked through sources like an engagement survey. And they're the things that like around feeling. So I feel like I am the only person in this room because maybe the interview process has some biases in it. So this is kind of the reason why we want change with the what metrics. Okay, I think there might be someone else off mute. If you want to go ahead and mute, just so it doesn't distract from the presentation, and also so people can ask questions later, that would be great. So when we take a look at the 4 steps for launching an employee resource group, and I'll talk a little bit more about my why. So when we take a look at the why, when I started working in employee resource groups, it was when I was actually at Yelp I started my first ERG when it was, my daughter was born in 2013. So when I came back to the States, it was 2013, 2014. It was clear to me that there was a lack in support for parents at the organization I was at. I had a really hard time coming back to the office. I didn't feel like my benefits were really sufficient. And I didn't have a place to pump. I could no longer breastfeed my daughter because I wasn't given those resources. My manager at the time didn't really understand the benefits of flexible work. And that was really my why. And my why was that I never wanted to have any parent go through what I went through. So I started advocating for working parents and ensuring that policies really ensured that people felt like they could go back to the office and bring their whole selves to the office. But at the same time, if they had family or caregiving needs, they could take care of that as well too. And my why then also, when I joined Uber, I started to realize that a lot of parents that I worked with, including myself, I didn't disclose that I had my daughter. I actually hid the fact that I had her. And then I found out there were many people on my team that had children that were hiding the fact that they had children as well too. Just for the record, that's not good. You want people to be able to bring their whole selves to work. If they have families, if they have, different gender identity or sexual orientation, they shouldn't have to hide, who they are. So that was my why. And then the what was that we had the opportunity to really shift this change by telling our story. So I kind of want to just drop that out there because you might be thinking, what is she talking about? The why, the how, how are we getting this done? And that might be different for all of you. And it's not lost on me that this might take time to understand, but it really will help you establish your social capital within the organization. And it'll help you establish why this is important and for executives to pay attention. So when we talk about an executive sponsor is one of the biggest key ingredients to establishing an employee resource group. You can do it on your own, but if you have someone that reports to your CEO or someone that not necessarily, they don't need to be at the executive leadership team level, but they might be someone that works extremely cross-functionally, across the entire organization, someone like a sales leader or someone that's in operations or maybe even legal. But to find your executive sponsor and how do you approach them, that conversation will be something maybe along the lines like, hey, would you mind if I grabbed 15 minutes with you? I have an idea of what I would like to contribute to the organization. Would you be interested in hearing a little bit more? And then maybe you and I could partner on this. And chances are they'll say yes, but it's really important that you're buttoned up with that approach. And again, expressing what your why and what the how is and how you're going to accomplish those needs that are within the organization. The timeline is the most crucial part of launching an employee resource group. I keep saying each is the most crucial. Executive sponsor, okay, they're all crucial, but the timeline is very important because we want to ensure that you have a clear directive that you're showing your executive sponsor and that you're showing the people that you're working with. This is when we launch. This is when we launch, and this is what it means to launch. This is our mission, and this is how we are going to start engaging employees to really drive that intercultural competence. And then how are we going to keep consistent engagement? So we launched this employee resource group, but I don't know, I haven't heard from them in a while. I saw some events maybe 6 months ago, but to keep things consistent, it's really challenging. So to give a little bit more context, almost exactly a year ago, last September, I launched 7 employee resource groups at Ripple. Is I've never launched 7 at the same time. I've launched 1 or 2, but 7, it was definitely a new and different experience. And it was really because I was able to lock in those executive sponsors and make them understand why this is important, let them know what the timeline is for launch, and then drive that consistent engagement by planning out several events to cover at least a couple of quarters and then make sure that people feel like they can attend those events and be themselves. So I'll pause there, and I know that we have quite a few people on the line, but I'm okay to maybe take one question if anyone has a burning question on kind of these 4 steps. give my little voice a break? No problem if not. We'll have Q&A at the end as well too. I always like to have just a little bit of a break.
Yeah. One
yes.
question in the chat. Can you list the 7 groups you started?
Yes. Okay. So, oh gosh, put me on the spot here. Okay. So we have, we have Asian at Ripple, Black at Ripple, Latinx at Ripple, Women at Ripple, Pride at Ripple, Able at Ripple, Parents. Boom. Doing my job. Yes. So those are the groups that we launched. We focus on protected classes. It's not lost on me that we could also have one dedicated to veterans. We could also have one dedicated to age diversity as well too. Those are the 2 that I didn't launch right away because I find that in my past experience, they've had a little bit more, well, a little less engagement than the others, depending on the number of veterans at the organization or people that feel comfortable advocating for age diversity. So yeah, those are the 7. Any other burning questions? I'm really glad that I was able to list those so easily. Okay, so find your ERG leads and develop your why. So let's prioritize working with your colleagues that have some type of leadership experience. This is really important. And leadership experience doesn't mean that they've run, global teams and they've hired and fired people and they've been interviewing, they've been on interview panels for 10 years. It's like, maybe they were in a sorority or fraternity. Maybe they ran a club at their college. Maybe they volunteer on the weekends and they're in charge of making sure all the volunteers show up on time. Any type of leadership experience can be really beneficial, but it doesn't need to be corporate leadership experience. But anytime that, agenda has been proposed or they have put together, a timeline or communications plan. This is really important. So we like to see that the employee has been at the company for at least a year, and then also be passionate about the work. I always say there's always a very fine line between passion and advocacy. We're all passionate about the work. That's why we decided to take an hour out of our day and dial in today. But to be an advocate is when you actually do the work. So let's prioritize working with colleagues that are really ready to be committed, and the why behind the groups to address, again, those biggest opportunities within the organization. And we always want to be reflecting on these 4 magical C's. Okay, so this is from Dr. Robert Rodriguez. You can all write down his name. Dr. Robert Rodriguez, he developed what we call the 4C model, and I've had the pleasure of working with him for a couple of years now. And he focuses on culture, careers, community, and commerce. Culture is when we bring cultural awareness within the organization and share what that experience is like for people that are othered often and are left out often. It might be cultural awareness around specific holidays. This is the more kind of traditional D&I work. Careers is when we ensure that those members have equal access to advance their career within the organization, and also that hiring practice is equitable. So it could be something around the lines of interviewing as well too. Community is when we affect communities outside of the organization. It might be giving back. It might be something along the lines of volunteer work. And then commerce, which usually comes after an employee resource group has been established for sometimes many years. This is when you actually align with business initiatives or business goals as well too. So the commerce piece is like at Uber, we had our Asian ERG. They did a ton of work around ensuring that drivers had the opportunity to put in the driver app that they could have their name pronunciation in there, because they found that a lot of people could not pronounce some of the names of their Uber drivers. And when you can pronounce someone's name, it just makes things so much better. So that's when we start to see the ERGs really affect an inclusive product, and those either customers or vendors, if it's B2B, can actually feel that it's inclusive, being in that effect happens from employee resource groups. Okay, number 2, we're going to establish the relationship with the executive sponsor. As I said, this is crucial. And I always like to say that the executive sponsor can really play so many different roles within the organization. They could be more of a mentor-mentee type of relationship. And if anyone's had like a great mentor on this call, they know that like you can kind of go to them with some stuff and be like, this is what I'm up against what do you think I should do? And there's a comfort level there where the mentor can really give them that honest feedback. This obviously does not happen overnight. So always be kind of, understanding of this. You can't expect everyone to kind of give me all the most, transparent feedback. But then you can also work with someone in more of a strategy role. So this is someone that might have, again, all those connections within the organization, and they'll know that you'll have an impact within the brand team, or you'll have a brand in marketing or employee brand, or maybe they're very connected in recruiting. And they'll be able to really help cater your ERG programming to the strategy within the organization. They might also take on a more broker or network type of relationship. So a broker or a networker, they will be connecting you obviously with people within their network, maybe even outside of the organization as well too. And with my executive sponsors, I ask them oftentimes, like, can you, like, we have a speaking event that's going to be focused on women in engineering. Hey, you are engineering leader. Like, can you connect me to 3 women within your network that work in engineering roles in tech? Can you give me 3 names? I'll give you a month, but please give me 3 names. And like asking, being really specific to those asks when it comes to networking. And then a developer will really be someone that's a little bit more rolling up their sleeves and getting into the weeds with the ERG lead when it comes to understanding around what that experience is like for that community that they're representing, which is really important. I will say, I should have put this on the slide. Your executive sponsor does not have to have the same identity that's represented within the employee resource group. Okay, so point being, like, your executive sponsor for Pride or for the LGBT group does not have to be part of the LGBTQ community. Your Asian ERG does not have to self-identify as Asian. I actually think that the most successful partnerships with executive sponsors come from allies, because it signals to the rest of the organization, yes, I may not be female, but I support women in this company, as everyone should. So please recognize that. Sometimes that gets lost in translation, but and you can also let your executive sponsors know this as well too. So they might be like, oh, why are you approaching me? Like, I'm not Asian. I don't know if I can help you all. It's like, it's okay. We know that you're not Asian, but we know that you could really advocate for us and showcase your allyship. And here are 2 ways why. Okay, friends. Okay, so let's roll out the timeline for launch and communications. So first step, you will be writing the communication that's announcing your employee resource group. You'll have your CEO send it, or you'll have your executive sponsor send it, or you'll have someone send it that when that name pops up at the top, they're like, oh, it's an email from so-and-so, I need to read this. Or maybe it's in a weekly communications, or it's in an all hands meeting. But the words, the amount that the words come out of it has to be someone that has the highest level of social capital, okay? And they're announcing the employee resource group, and there's a link in that email that says, if you wanna join, click this link. The link will then go to a Google form. The Google form will say, thank you for your interest in joining Women at Ripple. Please tell us your name and tell us if you're interested in becoming a lead for the group. You can collect your leadership within the launch. You don't have to launch with having all the leads in place. That's kind of hard. If you already have 2 leads in place, okay, fine. But if you don't have leads in place, that's okay too. So you could say, what's your name? Which ERG are you interested in joining? You can launch 2 at a time if you want. So you select both of them. And then you can also say, are you interested in a leadership position? And if you put that in the email, please link it to a Google Doc that outlines what it means to be an ERG lead. And if you need a doc, I have your doc, don't worry. You can reach out to me, or we can connect on Friday within the Chessie platform. But don't just say, hey, do you want to be a lead? And it's like, okay, what does that mean? Okay, I don't know. I've never led anything before. So always have, again, that why and the how, and like what actually this means, this work means. So you've collected all of your membership. Your CEO sent the email. You've collected 65 names of people that said, I want to join Women at Ripple. I can't wait to join this ERG. And then you also have like 5 people that said, hey, actually, I want to help lead as well too. You take a look at the folks that said they want to lead. And then again, going back to that criteria, leadership experience and and also being at the company for a year. So you can also add that in that form as well too. You could say, okay, do you want to join this ERG? Yes or no? Or thanks for joining. Here you go. Your name. Do you have leadership experience? And have you been at the company for a year? So you can collect that, and it feels do whatever feels like the most organic and less like kind of preachy. It's an appointment process. It's not an election process. You can then host your kickoff call. Your kickoff call should showcase your mission. So between the collect the membership data and the kickoff call, you've established your leadership. You've had a leadership kickoff call as well too. And you've just come up with your mission statement. Why do you have this? Remember, and then how are you going to be executing what needs to happen within the organization? I have a lot of sample mission statements. If anyone needs one, I'm a big fan of sharing resources. So if you want to check out some sample mission statements, you can come see me on Friday as well too. And then let's engage with your group, and let's establish engagement with a couple of different ways. And going back to the 4C model, let's host something that affects communities outside of the organization. Let's host a session that builds referrals, so like a sourcing jam. Let's host something that we have. Black History Month is going on right now in the UK, and you have a bunch of folks that are based in the UK. Let's host something that honors Black History Month within the UK. So putting together that calendar of events can be really a fun way to get going. Okay, so when you have this big launch, you're going to kick off your event, and you're going to have your event be pretty dynamic. Okay, so don't be afraid to think outside of the box. This is obviously a very strange time because we are remote, but you might have the opportunity, if this is next year, to like maybe come in person or meet at a park outside, or have a handful of people, meet up, but obviously whatever anyone's comfortable with. Invite some external speakers, have someone come that you don't have to, pay 10 grand to have, someone, a big name come, but it could be someone from your network. Or guess what? People reach out to me all the time over LinkedIn, and they're like, hey, will you come and speak at our ERG launch and talk about, empowering parents, women, people of color, and I always say yes, fine, I'm happy to come. So don't be afraid to reach out to people on LinkedIn. If you see that they're an ERG leader, I also have a list of ERG leaders from major tech companies. So some of my favorites have been like, I think we hosted, it was they have the best name, by the way, Blackbirds, which is the Black ERG over at Twitter. We had one of their leads come and speak at one of our launches. Make sure that you're giving people something. If you're like, I don't have any budget, you can ask your head of HR or your head of D&I. And if you don't have either of those, then, craft again, what the why is behind this work and why it's important to engage people. And then make sure your executive sponsor is there as well too. When you're engaging with your executive sponsor, I always like to ask them for a couple of things that are free. Like, hey, would you be willing to send this communication? Would you be willing to dial into this Zoom call? It costs nothing, but it goes such a long way. Let's create a strong calendar that incorporates all of your events. And remember, let's have some intersectional events. So not necessarily ones that just celebrate maybe Asian holidays or, big heritage months. We're in Latinx Heritage Month at the moment, but let's talk about what it means to be a woman that's Latinx. Let's talk about the effects that might happen if you are Latinx and you also are part of the LGBTQ community, and what that's like for you and what it was like to come out to your parents. We have National Coming Out Day that's on October 11th, I believe. What's that like for different identities that are not only LGBTQ, but also might have an identity on top of that as well too, because we're all so complex. So don't be afraid to explore that type of programming. And then let's delegate some of the work that aligns with your members' passions. So some people are like, I love community service work. I know about all these different places we can get involved in here in the Bay Area. You might have some friends that are in recruiting. So leveraging them and watching programs within recruiting is great too. But make sure that you're keeping it consistent and mapping out something, I don't know, maybe once a quarter, once a month, totally up to you. Okay, I see there's so many things in the chat. Maybe people are just like sharing knowledge, but I'm going to stop my, do you want to go into, do you want to bring up the screen again at the end or do you want to talk about Friday real quick and then we'll watch into Q&A?
Yeah, perfect. So if you want to go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Awesome. So everyone's kind of been asking, what's going on Friday? What's going on Friday? So
I know. I'm like hyping it up. I'm like,
I mentioned
more of this. Yeah.
So we want to invite everyone here to participate in the Chesney community. So this is a dedicated space for ERG leaders to share best practices, to network, to collaborate on cross-company events, which is something that I think a lot of ERGs are starting to do more and more of, like a Twitter ERG interacting with a Facebook ERG and kind of doing some cross collaboration that way. It's also a place for you to access helpful resources. So Alison mentioned having a list of ERG leaders or speakers to come speak at different events. So like we have a resource hub, we have a general space where people can ask questions. So on Friday, Alison has volunteered to kind of host this Ask Me Anything session. She will be answering questions throughout the day on Friday. So come ask anything from how to get an ERG started to how to, what best practices can she share. So come this Friday, October 8th, we will send out an invite to this community after this call. So join that and, come ask any questions that you have.
Cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to hype it up so much. I was like just so excited to actually utilize your platform as well too. And I think that's what's really meaningful. And I want to also plug here as well that I've been doing this work now for a decade, and senior leaders will always ask where do you track things? Where are your metrics? Where are your things? And I've always had these rinky-dink spreadsheets that are not good. And Chesney's really been able to take that that tracking in that community to the next level, which I'm really grateful for. So I'll leave that there. So I'm going to stop my share for a second. And then if anyone feels like coming camera on, that would be fun. If you don't feel like it, that's okay too, but I'd love to see some beautiful faces. And I'll take a look at,
you want me? I've made a list.
You made a list. Okay, good. So feel free to bring camera on. We're enjoying the party. What's up, Jeff? How's it going? Okay.
Awesome. Nice to see everyone.
Let's do it.
So first question, you did mention that you set up 7 ERGs. How long did it take for you to do that?
So it took me from beginning to end. I started in May and I had them launched by September 1st. So the first month I was onboarding. So let's see, July and August. So it took me 2 months to launch those 7. I will say I'm the global head of diversity and inclusion. So they kind of have to do what I say. It's going to be a little different if you're not working maybe in HR. But it was a core part of my work. I had wanted to put them off maybe for 6 months, but I saw there was a huge need within the organization. But it should take you about 2 months. Yeah, you're kind of on it.
Okay.
Hey, Reese, nice to see you. Tiffany.
Hey, everyone.
Hey.
This isn't really a question, but she was hoping that you would address the topic of burnout for ERG leaders. So roles are typically volunteer roles. Mm-hmm. And although members have a passion and drive, they get fatigued and end up leaving the role. What advice, I guess, can you give to speak to burnout in the ERG?
Oh, I experienced this personally, and I completely understand. It's not lost on me that this work, it's a huge lift, and it's not only a huge lift just to be doing the work and dedicating the time, but then oftentimes if you are leading an employee resource group, it's probably put on you, and it's probably a different experience for you being the only at the company as well too. So my advice to you for avoiding burnout is really to find people within the organization to help you and to try to delegate as much as you can. And this might be even setting a goal for yourself. I'm going to find an extra person to help me, 1 person a month. I'm going to put a calendar reminder, and I'm going to find this person. Or if you see someone that's joined the organization, maybe you approach them in 6 months and you get to know them. So once they hit that 1 year mark, they can help you. But You should be delegating and trying not to do everything yourself as much as possible. If you have an HR leader, if you have a diversity and inclusion leader, you can ask them, say, hey, is there anyone that's approached you that says they're willing to support the work? I know when I joined Ripple, people came out of the woodwork. They're like, let me know how I can help. I'm like, ooh, careful what you wish for, because I'm going to be coming for you. So they'll usually have a list of folks that are willing to help you. But yeah, delegate as much as you can.
Awesome. You spoke to the importance of having executive sponsors. Is it strange to have 2 executive sponsors, or is that kind of recommended?
I think it's fine. I think 2 executive sponsors, I think as long as that you're not taking away from one of the other groups, if one of the other groups does not have an executive sponsor and you have 2, maybe think about sharing some of that love. But I think that's fine to have 2 executive sponsors. I think, we talked about the different roles that they can play: mentor, coach, networker, strategist. Maybe think to yourself, kind of reflect, don't tell them like you're the mentor, you're the strategist, but like think about how you want to utilize kind of their different skill sets and their social capital within the organization. But no, I'm not big on rules. I'm like, whatever gets the job done. Hey, Tiffany.
Can someone be the executive sponsor of more than one ERG, or should they always be different people?
I think they should be different people. But again, if you have an organization that's like less than 500 people, maybe there's an executive sponsor that supports all of your employee resource groups. Like that could fly. If you're like Uber, and you have 29,000 employees, like you need to have an executive sponsor dedicated. It's all about scale. And then also it's all about the number of members within the employee resource group as well too. So if you have, 10 members, or if you have hundreds of members, it all depends on kind of the growth opportunity there. Yeah, that's a good question.
This is a good question. Can you explain how ERGs interact with diversity, equity, and inclusion councils or committees? Is there collaboration? And if so, what does that look like?
Yes. So when I joined Ripple, and I'll give you an example. When I joined Ripple, it was the first week of May. As we know, George Floyd lost his life May 25th. So every company on the planet decided to launch a D&I council, right? If they didn't have employee resource groups, like, we need to say something. Let's get these people in a room. And the councils were great. And we developed one at Ripple, even because I was like, oh my gosh, like my job is so relevant, and I need to start working right now. So I pulled together a council, and this is just to give an example. And that council then was kind of the training grounds for my ERG leads. Everyone in that council then became employee resource group leads. And then we sunset the council. If you want to have both, you can have both. Just make sure that you list out the why you have both. So what does the council take care of, and what do the employee resource groups take care of? I can't answer that for you because I don't know enough about your organization. If you want to have a call, we can have a call. But the council needs to be responsible for something very specific, and the ERGs need to be responsible for something very specific. Otherwise, what happens is we start to see splintering. And when you experience splintering, then it just dilutes the work, and you have less and less people coming to events, and the mission isn't clear, and that how and the why aren't clear. So I like to say one or the other. I know Facebook's been really struggling at the moment because, well, for a lot of reasons, but because they had diversity, they have so many councils. They have councils within so many of their departments, right? And they also have thousands of ERG leads and members in ERG. So it can be tricky. Yeah.
Awesome. Can you give examples of kickoff events for organizations that have mostly remote employees? What is the best way to host a kickoff?
Oh, I have tons because we've only hosted remote kickoffs. Okay, so there's a couple different ones. Okay, we did our ERG leads introduce themselves. They had a slide that gave like their life map or roadmap, and gave really personal insights into like who they are, made it fun and exciting, engaging. We then partnered. There's a great company. Maybe I'll pull the link. Burnout Games. They do this most incredible job on virtual trivia And I'm not I'm not a game person. Two, not a trivia person. And I also don't like things that are like virtual as well too. They do a great virtual trivia and it's really inexpensive. We've also done things related to with the kickoff events, fireside chats that explore different dimensions of identity. So it could be, again, going back to that intersectional approach. And then there's also stuff that's more, culturally related, like food and drinks, like virtual happy hours. We sent out drink recipes and also like baked good recipes for people that might not drink alcohol. And we all came together and shared that experience. We just did 2 big cooking classes. And at first I was like, oh gosh, I cook every night. Like I cook for my family. I do not want to sit on Zoom and cook. It was so fun. It was so fun. So feel free to get Burnout. Yes. Reese, have you used them? They're so good. They're so good. I love them. So Burnout, virtual trivia, they're incredible. I don't work for them.
Just shameless.
Not sponsored, not sponsored.
So any recommendations on a good way to track members? We mainly rely on Slack groups, but I bet I would get a lot of feedback from people in that group who are there to be allies and be supportive, but maybe not feel appropriate to participate in the group, which makes it hard to get a real feel for the size of the group and making contact planning.
Yeah, we've always come across this. So membership lists or groups can be from Slack, they can be from email lists as well too. And it's always hard to have those two, always make sure that they reflect each other. And there's going to be more passive members, and there's going to be engaged members. In my eyes, all members are great members. Like some people just won't feel comfortable, like, maybe joining, like I'm joining the Asian ERG and like, I might not feel comfortable like chiming in and saying like how I feel about certain aspects of Asian identity. I mean, I do because I'm in diversity and inclusion, but not everyone will feel comfortable, but they might be reading every single thing that's posted. So we used to track when we had in-person events, we definitely would track, attendance and okay, what are the ones that people are RSVPing and they're actually showing up to? What's that percentage look like? I will say, again, going back to like the culture related things, the highest attended events, I'll tell a quick story, a spicy food challenge. It was with Latinx and with the Asian ERG. I would get like literally hundreds of signups for the spicy food challenge. We'd line up people and they'd have all these dishes. And then at Uber, they made everyone sign like releases because they're afraid they're gonna get like sick. I'm like, oh my God. It was so crazy. So anyways, don't be afraid to do that type of work as well too. It's okay. Bring people together. You just never know. But yeah, don't be afraid to track just the straight number of the Slack group, but then track how it's growing over time. If you've hosted a big event that's company wide, you had 10 more members, like that's something to celebrate. They went over there and clicked on you,
And shameless plug, Chezi, our software platform, does help you
Yes.
track membership and participation. If you're looking for a demo, we'll send out a quick video after this, and then you can contact me or my brother, and we're happy to do a live demo with you and your
Highly
team.
recommend that. Yes, we're in the process of implementing that as well too. So they're going to take that off my plate, which I'm grateful for.
How often should ERGs meet within a given year?
I'm sorry, I was reading. How often
should ERGs meet within a given year?
Within
a given year.
Within a given year. Okay, sorry. How often should ERGs meet within a given year? So is it the ERG leads or is it with the executive sponsor? So ERG leads should meet with their executive sponsor once a month. The ERG should come together at least once a month, like host a monthly call. And the monthly call should include any upcoming programming, and that's for all members. The ERG leaders should be meeting maybe once a week, maybe for a quick check-in if there's nothing to cover, or every 2 weeks. Your D&I leaders should be meeting with ERGs on a monthly basis. I mean, I'm chatting with them almost daily over Slack, but there should be a standing one-on-one. I hope that answers the question. But
Lots of questions, Allison. They're all coming in.
I know. Come on. This is why I went fast with the deck, because I could see the chat. It was like 46, 47, 48.
Blowing up.
Have it up.
So how do you think ERGs would be different from a public versus a private organization?
Oh, well, I've worked at both. I worked at, I launched employee resource groups, pre-IPO, post-IPO. I now have them I don't see any difference, to be honest. I think the only difference is when you release diversity and D&I reports and demographic data. Sometimes legal, wants a little bit more involvement, but I see no differences. Yeah, so.
What is the best practice for how involved HR should be in ERG's creation and direction? How much autonomy should ERG leaders / members have to make their own decisions?
Oh, that's a tricky one. So I think I think HR should be involved because it's most likely where your budget's going to come from. And if someone's paying you, you kind of have to, work with them. So from the autonomy perspective, I think keeping them in the loop of kind of your general programming and asking for feedback. And sometimes it's going to be feedback that you might not want to hear, unfortunately. And sometimes it's going to be feedback that might feel like a setback to what you want to accomplish and how you want to address that why and the how. But in the end, you're going to have to find a way to work with your people team. Your people team are going to be the ones, and also they should be really interested in working with you because you are doing this work to improve, workplace culture in a lot of different ways. So I think asking them first, like, hey, what is your level? How much would you like to be involved in ERG programming? If they say we don't want to be involved, okay, that's fine. Or if they say, oh, we'd like to be involved, let's set up a monthly check-in when we review kind of what you're working on and how we can support you. So I think it can be a challenge. And this was a challenge for me as an ERG lead. I was told at one point that we shouldn't have an employee resource group, and they said no. I won't say what company that was at. I still started the group anyways, and I proved out the value of it from a retention standpoint. So yeah, I'm happy to speak to that person one-on-one as well too.
Awesome. We've got a lot of questions around compensation for ERG leaders.
Yes.
I think people want to just know your general thoughts on this. If ERG leads are to be compensated, what does that structure look like?
Yes. So I've led compensation programs for employee resource groups since 2017. I started at Uber, and I've helped other various companies establish that program. The most recent one was LinkedIn, who I partnered with. I'm now establishing it for Ripple, and then for a couple of my other clients. Employee resource groups, as one of my mentors says, Carla Martin, if you love me, say it in cash. Okay. Like, if you like the work I'm doing, pay me. Okay. So my compensation structure usually, so it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on the size of the employee resource group and how long they've been around. Generally, it's a one-time cash bonus. Okay. It's a one-time cash bonus. It's not a monthly payout. And that's the easiest way to get it approved in a more of a spot bonus form. And it's usually paid at the in Q1 or whenever your Q1 is. So it's reflective of you working as an employee resource group as a lead for a full year. I usually base it off 3 different things. One is your membership growth. Remember, we talked about the Slack channels and the email lists, and we can go back and forth all day around, active members versus passive members. But like, if people are joining and they're, clicking on that link, that means they want to know more. So your membership growth. So I ask my ERGs to take a look at their growth, usually quarter over quarter. Are you seeing more and more people joining the conversation or logging in? The second one is just output. How many events or initiatives have you hosted? Are you hosting something monthly? Are you hosting something quarterly? Or did you host one thing last year? What's the output? And the third thing I measure is your engagement with your executive sponsor. So are you meeting with your executive sponsor the 12th of never, or are you meeting with them monthly? What do those meetings look like? Are you sending an agenda the night before? And how are you leveraging them with those different kind of those roles that they can play. So then I then propose a one-time bonus. And that bonus, that cash amount is the same for everyone. I've had a lot of pushback in my time around like, well, this person works in an hourly role and this person makes, 6 figures in an engineering role. Should it be different? No, Okay, everyone gets the same amount of money, they're doing the same amount of work. I also don't believe in prorating it as well too, because with some exceptions, because someone can come in halfway through the year and do 10 times the amount of work than someone that's been sitting in the seat for a year. So I don't prorate either. If you want to talk more about that, or if there's any HR leaders on the call that want to talk more about implementing that, let's party. Let's get these people paid.
You got a lot of love for if you love me, pay me in cash.
If you love me, show me in cash. Yeah.
Nico wrote that down for sure.
Google or call her Carla Martin, my closest friend. She taught me that a long time ago, over 10 years ago.
Okay, 2 more questions I'm seeing. So do you recommend having membership rules?
Membership rules? I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think anyone should be able to be a member of any employee resource group. I think if someone raises their hand and they want to be involved, they can be involved. I will say, I do believe in having certain events or safe spaces for people that have specific identities. But I think anyone should be able to be a member of any employee resource group. My job, part of my job, the word is inclusion in it. So we want to include. Yeah.
Awesome. And then the last question I'm seeing in the chat, as a DEI lead, how do you partner with ERGs? How often do you connect? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I connect with them on a monthly basis. I don't know, he might be on the call. I also have an ERG program manager I recently hired, and he hosts a monthly call with them. I did it for many years, and now I'm grateful to have Colin hosting the call. That call will usually have one of the employee resource groups share an insight or key learnings on a recent event that they had. It will usually have an external speaker to share some knowledge. I know Toby's spoken at ours a couple of times, so if you want to have some folks from Chesy come and speak, and then any other kind of housekeeping stuff around budgets or expensing, upcoming events. So monthly call, I engage with them, and then I also have monthly one-on-ones with them as well too. I also sit on all of their executive sponsor calls as well, so, and help make sure that those go well. They feel supported.
Awesome. Those are all the questions I'm seeing in the chat. If anyone has any outstanding questions, feel free to come off mute and just ask them directly.
Anyone?
Yeah, I was wondering, how do we contact you for the templates, like the leadership template or the mission template that you have?
I think, you know what I'll do is I'll create them and then drop them on Friday. If that's okay, maybe?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. I'm just hyping Friday.
Everyone come ask your question.
No, it's gonna be so fun.
Hi, Allison. I'm Race Alder, and I am an ERG project coordinator for over 30 ERGs. So I would love to get that list of ERG leaders that you have. So if you could drop a link in the chat, and I have connected with you on LinkedIn. So I just wanted to put that up.
Okay. Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay. Yeah. I probably won't share the list. Like if you want to speak to someone in a specific group, I'm probably not going to post like a list of everyone's like names and contact details. But if there's like a specific company you want to be connected to, feel free to let me know. And yeah, LinkedIn, I'm good, not great at keeping up with messages. So feel free to add me or send me a note as well too. And I'll try my best to get back to you. But yeah, actually, I'll drop my email in here as well too. So because I'm better at that.
And this is going to be the last question.
All right.
Allison. So I work at a startup company with no DEI efforts as of right now. What should the relationship with ERG leads and HR look like when starting initiatives? You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm not sure you touched on it from this perspective.
Yeah. So when I joined Ripple, there was zero, like 0, 0, 0, nothing going on. Like, hello, nothing. So I think starting with a diversity, equity, and inclusion mission statement, and that's a great place to start. And then starting with maybe 3 employee resource groups, like start small and kind of take it from there, but always make sure that your head of HR is really supporting you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison, for answering.
You got it. I'll see you all soon.
Again, everyone, this has been recorded. I'll send out the recording link after this call, as well as an invite to the community. And don't forget to join that community by Friday to participate in the Ask Me Anything session with Allison. She'll be answering any outstanding questions that you may have.
Yay.
Thank you all. Everyone have a great rest of your hump day.
Yeah, thank you. Keep up the amazing work.